right, preparing to live the meeting is giving me a prepare.
Sorry that took so long.
Oh, no, you're fine. It happens.
I didn't have a Zoom account.
Done redirecting and to live the meeting. All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You're great.
Okay, and I can hear you, so that's great. I'm going to, it's live right now, I think. I think someone's watching it, but I'm gonna see if I can activate chat here, and I'll put the link in chat so you can have it.
Are you saying it on Instagram or, oh, perfect.
Zoom chat.
Answered my question. Okay,
Yep.
I'm just going to add it to my website. Interview or see.
All right. Hopefully it's going well so far.
Yeah,
I don't have my second monitor set up, so I can't watch how the stream's going from here. But
are you able to see any questions that come in? I just sent out the link on my website, so hopefully a few people.
Yeah, I'm able to see some of the chats.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, Jackie, I just saw that your video's off. I wasn't sure if you were posting on your account or.
Yeah, no, I think someone in the YouTube chat said hi, so I'm definitely good on that end. Anywho, hello everyone. So we're all good. My name's Robert, but everyone else probably already knows that. So I guess if we want, we can go over our guests and then where you guys are from in terms of sites, how to find you, names, pronouns, things like that.
Awesome. I'll go first. Hi, I'm Griffin. I run the account disability.and.we on Instagram and also TikTok Griffin03. Was there anything else you were wanting me to say?
Not really. I guess that pretty much sums it up. You got your pronouns and your name description there, so everyone should be able to see that. I guess, Jackie, you can give your little introduction if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm Jackie, as said. I run the account on Instagram called OMFG period, that's period Jax. And I have a TikTok too, but it's private for now till I figure the app out.
Understandable. I just say that I don't believe in TikTok because I can't figure it out yet.
I'm trying.
It's definitely got a learning curve.
Definitely a learning curve. So this town hall is going to be all about disability awareness, and disability access for any viewers who couldn't figure that out or who weren't following, I guess, our Facebook page, because our website we're hoping to have launched within the coming 2 weeks, along with some surprises. So keep tight on that. The main focus will just be, along with a general conversation, broad questions, both from the guests here and anyone in chat. So if anyone has any thoughts, comments, and/or concerns, feel free to leave them away. The general focus will be on disability awareness and engagement, both in the broader society as well as the museum facility in and of itself, because we're trying to be as open to everyone. And as I've been talking with Griffin before we went live, we were talking about some exhibits and some general solutions. And the point of this stream, which will be posted so people can make more comments, is to make sure that we're aware of every group, because everyone's different. Everyone has different abilities and disabilities, and everyone needs different access building. I guess I'll start off with one note on the exhibit. So before we began, Griffin and I were talking about exhibit access and how some exhibits you'll get there and you'll have your nice little, sign at a 45-degree angle, which has all the information about the exhibit you're looking at. Most of our exhibits will probably be at a general curve, like a crescent moon. So either bulging in or bulging out. So you'll be able to see it from wherever you are along this bar. It's just that plaque will have the information. Obviously, some people won't be able to read that because it's average height suited for average sized people and taller people. So if you're in a lower chair without a lift function, or if you're just a shorter person in general, because we all have those tumbler meme friends, it might be more difficult for them to read. And we are trying to gain some permanent solutions. One solution that we at the museum had considered was building, rather than a circle, building more of a angled exhibits. So you'd have your exhibit, which would be on both sides of this, and they'd kind of just be at an angle there. That's your little railing. That's the main front where people on the front can look and see in. And this is a ramp that just goes in kind of a little half circle between the two exhibits, allowing people who need that higher vantage point to stand on them and read out at, a higher sign while getting a higher vantage point on portions of the exhibit. And there'd be one on both sides. And because the exhibit would be angled in either a backward circle or a frontward circle going like that, it would offer a better vantage. Here, I'll show that one more time. It would offer kind of just a little better vantage point. One thing that Griffin had mentioned was a more short-term alternative, which might also help with viewing, given some of the exhibits might be crowded, would be having physical booklets. Because while some museums have the audio function where you can carry along your little Walkman, some people are either hard of hearing or those aren't the most best and most reliable options given technology. One thing that I had thought about just now, actually, which is why we're having these video discussions, was that poses a problem for people with limited hand function or limited number of limbs. Given that, well, it's nice to walk around with, you enter your hall room, which has all the different exhibits in it, and you grab your little booklet or a larger pamphlet with different size font, depending on eyesight, and you walk through and you have a book where you can turn the pages to the different exhibits. If you have limited hand function or limited arm function, it might still be nice to have the other option. So if anyone in the chat has ideas, if Jackie or Griffin have any ideas, those are some things we can discuss. We also have various other questions just laid out here. If anyone thinks of anything from your past jobs, past work, or just other experience that might be able to go into that. And yeah, we can get started. Would you like to start on that question or other accessibility questions, either of you?
I do have an idea for the pamphlet idea that you were mentioning. What about Braille for people that read? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But people that are blind, they feel the bumps?
Yes. So the immediate thought about that was we had considered putting Braille on any signs, plaques. If you have your little plaque here on the top, you have the writing section with the title saying which part of the exhibit to look at. But next to it, you could have a plaque specifically for Braille with like a description about it. So if someone wants to just read, they'd have the same information as well as a little bit more detailed description about what artifact is on display. Definitely on that ramp section, you could probably go into a little bit more detail. One thing of concern had been not all of the exhibits would be tri-exhibits. So you'd have your exhibit there, but not all exhibits would be there. So what would we put on the wall? We have not considered a little bit more detail. You definitely could have a ramp with a railing and a Braille function. We had talked about like other ways to do it, maybe having audio for just guides entering, just kind of like directional stuff. That was something that you wouldn't need during if you had a tour, but outside of tours, just the accessibility for people who are either blind entirely or vision impaired is something that we definitely need to research into a little bit more.
Something I was looking at just about how you were saying having the exhibit sort of triangular and having like the ramp going up on the one side. You could always just do 2 plaques, and so you have the tall one and then one that's like a little bit lower, closer to, I think maybe like 3.5, 4 feet off the ground, versus the other one would probably be closer to 5 foot, 5'5" sort of thing. So it's a little bit, because like for me, and I have a pretty average manual chair size, and I'm fairly short, but like average for looking would be about 3.5 feet tall. Power chairs are normally a little bit taller, and then kids chairs are a little bit shorter. So having 2 might work. The only problem would be with the braille, if you have a wheelchair user who uses braille, if it's only on the tall one, I guess they could reach up when really, it depends. Like I think that could be an option. I don't know how, like it definitely need more consideration in that aspect of how that would work, or even just having braille cards and having like the name of the exhibit in braille on each sign, and then they can match the card to the sign, if that makes sense. Or having them in order in a little booklet. But that was my idea while you were talking. I have amassed many sticky notes.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And just going off of what you said earlier about workshopping, all of these are ideas that will be workshopped, and we intend to have more town halls on this topic in the future. One thing we definitely hope to do as we get near to the point of construction and curating the exhibits would be trial runs, where we set up like a test exhibit just to get the general dynamic of how people move through it and any issues that may arise. I guess that leads me to my next question, which is just general concerns or things you see in broader society in terms of access. I noted that on one of the live streams on your Instagram, you talked about how some buildings and companies will use the bare minimum access requirements. And when you look at your average wheelchair, for instance, because of the hand grips on the side of the wheels, just so you're not touching the wheels, and so you have a comfortable area to put your hands, and even with your elbows going out or a backpack hanging off the back, you end up being wider than what the minimum requirement would be, so that you end up not being able to enter rooms, handicapped stalls, certain areas or things like that. This also leads then to the broader question of just other things you've noticed that might be of concern, where people don't usually, it works, but it's not the most optimal from the perspective of someone who'd be using it. Like, for instance, you talked about ramp angle due to just general strength. You've talked about door width, as we've mentioned, door height, handles, buttons to open doors, curbs, things like that, things that just people generally might not totally think of.
Something that like places, they like do the bare minimum. And I'll say that with as much offense as businesses want to take from it. They do the bare minimum. I'll go into places and there's like the accessible parking, and half the time the accessible parking, there isn't the little dip in the curb. There's not the curb cut out there. It's over on the other side of the building. And so you have to go around the building. And for me, I use my wheelchair for like serious fatigue issues and stuff like that. So I'm using almost as much energy getting into the building in my chair as I would be if I were walking. So if places need to be accessible, which really they do, but I know some historic buildings, they're like, we can get away with anything. Okay, whatever. But most buildings, they should have a curb cut right by the door. Like it's pretty simple, it's pretty easy, and they also need to consider like people with strollers and stuff too. They need that as well. So it's not like a huge difference, and it means that businesses are going to have more foot traffic. They're going to have more people coming in because more people can get in the building without running around the building trying to figure out how to get in. Jackie, were you wanting to say anything on cheap accessibility?
I've run into my fair share, take that pun as you will, but of inaccessibility to buildings and whatnot. And a lot of the older buildings will say like, oh, well, we don't have enough people with disabilities that come into this store. And it's like, well, yeah, because we can't.
It's like
So
the reason you're not getting that like many oh thank goodness many disabled people coming in is because there isn't access for disabled people to come in. I don't know how they don't make that connection.
I don't know.
Yeah, it seems that people tend to just look at the demographic of what they get and then catering to that demographic as much as they can and cutting the areas of the smaller numbers. But we've definitely been to enough events, and then we will be to enough events to have enough hindsight to avoid that. Shout out to anyone on the Middle East Coast. We will be attending Awesome Con, so that should be fun. But I guess just going off of that, other things to consider. Is there anything major in terms of the differences between the types of chairs that should be considered? I know you've mentioned some differences between power chairs and non-power chairs with ramp size and ramp length and ramp height. Obviously, you talked about the parking access, but for other things like elevators, for instance, is there any, obviously not weight concerns probably, but any just access concerns, movement, things like that?
So this is COVID specific with the elevators. A bunch of places have decided because elevators are such a small space, they're not going to have them open. We still leave the house sometimes. Like, where it's, and like, I was at the mall when, back when Canada was actually open, in the middle of COVID, because we reopened for a bit and then we're closed down again. Now we're trying to reopen. It was on the elevator, there's signs like, don't use the elevator unless necessary. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm in my chair, so I'm going to use the elevator. But then there were people like, it's one of those things that like, they'd limit the amount of people in the elevator. So I was going in alone, which is fine for me. But if someone has seizures, for example, they can't really be alone. So like limiting to like one person in the elevator per time, that's not gonna work. And some places just shut down the elevators. They turn power off to them. I'm like, no, like I get COVID. Like I get it. I understand they don't want people going into the elevators spraying COVID because it's a small space, you can't socially distance. But they need to keep in mind, okay, so I have a grocery store that has 2 floors, or I'm a medical building and I have multiple floors. I'm a dentist and the dentist office is on the 4th floor. The elevators have to be open because we're stuck inside because of COVID, most of us are, but we still have to do daily living things sometimes. Like we still have to go to walk-in clinics when we get the stomach bug or whatever. So here's my little rant.
Okay. No, yeah, that definitely makes sense. It does raise some questions though for post-COVID relevant things. She's just thinking about elevators and why they'd be limited to one person or not limited to one person. Not that I'm defending it. It just got me thinking. Are there any particular elevator sizes that would be best to stay away from? Because I know there's the average elevator size in something like a mall, but then there's also the average elevator size in something like a hospital, for instance. And is there any like square width that would be best, given some power chairs have batteries on the back? Students definitely, because we'll be catering to tour groups, will have using the back of their wheelchair for storage. And then going off of that, also just the size of the elevator for mobility, because some of the elevators, and with the designs that we currently have in the works, some of our elevators would have this, the double doors where you enter on one side of the elevator, but depending on the level you stop at, you leave on the other. So you have to either stay straight or turn around. Obviously, for the generic elevator, if it only has one door, you have to turn around. You don't have the option of just going out the opposite side.
Jackie, did you have anything to say on that? I don't really know.
The elevators with the 2 doors on either side works pretty good for me. I don't know about you, but
They're all right. I've only used a few because I've only had my chair. I've only been using a chair for a year, but I've only had my actual chair that I can actually use for long distance for about 2 months now, a month and a half. So I don't go out very much because of COVID anyways, but I have used a few. I don't mind them. They're not, I can back up pretty well. So all else fails, I just do a little butt scoot back. But what was I gonna say? I don't remember what I was gonna say. Sorry.
We're talking about the double-sided door elevators.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with them. I could see how some people would. Honestly, more so with kids' chairs in the fact that like the kids who can't self-propel. So when the parent is pushing the wheelchair, turning around might be a little bit more difficult. Similar to a mother turning around with like a very large stroller might be slightly difficult. So just having like an overall decent width, and I don't really know the measurements off the top of my head. I know there's measurements somewhere.
I have a point to make out too here. When I go on elevators or out in public in general, my wheelchair is a little bit wider because I have what's called an eye level lift. So the seat rises so I can reach like cupboards or higher stuff. And so on the back, if I can get my chair high enough, you can see that there's a battery on the back. So oftentimes when I put a backpack on, it sticks out more.
You have a blur on the back, but I think we can see it. Oh, you went up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we it's high enough, we can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, so that's something to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like those more medium range rather than the average range elevators would be a little bit better, because I know a lot of the mall elevators and especially school elevators are a little bit smaller boxes than something at certain buildings or sports stadiums or airports, for instance. Obviously, you don't need the massive elevators like at hospitals, though. Those would be really, really nice, especially for having multiple people in them at one time. But just going off of the raising, what about buttons? Because that's something that I imagine would be pertaining just to elevators. I don't see us really having that problem, given the max number of floors outside of the viewing tower would be, I think 5. Yeah, 5 floors is the max number of floors, and then there's a viewing tower. So I think honestly, the maximum number of floors that any of the elevators would have would be 7. But as Griffin had mentioned, in terms of like buttons just to open a door, sometimes being obstructed, I'm imagining if you don't have a buddy or if you don't have a lifting chair, some of those higher buttons in elevators might be difficult. Are there elevators that just, have 2 sets of buttons, one on the right, one on the left, one higher and one lower? What are some of the solutions that you've seen or things that you think would be best to be implemented if that's ever been a problem? Because it might not be.
Jackie?
I'm not really sure because like my seat is kind of an average height, I would think. So I can reach a lot of the buttons in elevators pretty well. I'm not sure what that would be like for like a manual wheelchair or anything else.
So on the manual wheelchair side of things, I guess, I have a fairly short wheelchair because I'm like 5'2" standing, so I'm fairly small. So my chair is really small. It's yeah, Jack and I are both but so my chair is actually technically the same size as a child's chair, which I get teased about a lot by my friends.
Me too.
It's an adult brand chair, but it's a children's size. They had to like, well, of course it's custom made, but they were like, yeah, you're getting children's size. I'm like, great. And it's even too big for me as is. But
me too.
Most of the time, manual wheelchairs, like adult ones, will be the wheels are about 24 inches. So depending on their torso height, most of us are around the same height level, just unless you have like a super long torso or you have a super short torso, because 24-inch wheels, like you can see, I have a twin size bed right behind me, so they come up to about the top of the twin size bed. So most of us we're about this height sitting in a manual chair is about a 10-year-old, 8 to 10-year-old sort of size, about I haven't measured myself. I think it's like 4'5" or something. So we're not too short that we won't be able to reach the buttons. I think the main issue would be if someone has limited movement in their shoulders. So say they can't raise their shoulders above here, then reaching that top button might be a little bit difficult. So trying to keep, and it really depends, like for most buildings that are under like 4 floors, that won't be an issue because all of the buttons will be quite condensed. But buildings that are like, you know, those hotel buildings that there's like 30 floors or whatever, that might become a bit more of an issue.
I can see that.
Like ever. So
yeah, I only live in like a 3-story building. So
yeah, and the design, which we haven't premiered yet, that is coming, but the design is mainly 5 stories. Like I said, there's the consideration of like a viewing tower, and then if you're an intern or you work there and you need to go to the use the access elevator, which would take you to archives, which would be below the museum, then you'd have to deal with some sub ones, but those would be lower level. That would mostly just be a pain for taller people who have to reach down lower. But really, the only buttons anyone who's not working there would have to hit would be 1 through 7. Outside of the, you know, because the archives would be sub-level, you know, sub-level 1, sub-level 2, and sub-level 3. Yeah, I think 3s. I've only ever seen a museum with 3 sub-levels. We'd probably only have 2. But that's work stuff, and that's obviously accounted for because you're just reaching down at that point. But yeah, so yeah, down on the elevators. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but just on the employee side of things, make sure you make whatever the employees have to access accessible too. Because yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just want to say it because a lot of times people will be like, okay, well, it's just for our guests. But like even my I used to work in retail. Awful, don't do it ever. Just get rid of retail.
I relate.
But the storage area, they had an accessible bathroom storage area that they had built, but then they filled it with a bunch of stuff. And so I was like, I'm not going to be able to use my chair at work if I need to go to the bathroom. So if I have any sort of, because sometimes I just randomly lose feeling in my legs or my whole body at some point, which is why I have power assist. And so I'm like, if I'm having that, I'm just gonna have to call in sick to work because I won't be able to go to the bathroom or I'll have to go across the mall. So like making sure that even the employee areas are accessible is another thing that I think a lot of people don't think of. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. That's fine. And you raise a very great point. And I keep forgetting that to be careful sometimes with my speech for clarification. Because things might be interpreted wrong, or I might misspeak or something. But What I meant was there wouldn't be a concern in access for that from my perspective,
Oh,
because if you look at your elevator, you'd have your buttons and you'd have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, people who work there need to access the archives. All of those buttons would be below that anyway.
okay. Yeah.
So
Sorry, it was
to access the archives, you're reaching down. You don't have to worry about the height perspective. But that is something, again, we got to double check, because as you mentioned with the height of the wheels, I don't think it would be too low, but just like, with railings, with where the buttons are, where the buttons for the keys are and things like that, we want to make sure that everything's at a good set level. You did open well for the other question though, because I was next on the list was to talk about food and bathrooms. I was going to start off with food for things like, obviously there would be cafes, and those for the most part would be your standard, lunchroom style. You grab your tray, you slide your tray along, you have all your different areas, and you go to the deli area, or you go to this type of food, depending on the type of cuisine we're serving based on whatever we choose to serve for that area. Unlike some museums, we don't really have the ability to just say, oh, this is our subject, so that's the food. We're more broad, but that's more so sliding the tray down, and then someone can offer to, they bring the food up from their cook station and they put it on your tray and put the tray back on the thing. Anyone who can't carry their tray, the tray could be, carried for them by an attendant to the table. They could be assisted in that regards. Some people who might want to be more personal, not use, I don't want to say not use assistance, but there sometimes you're either off that day, or there are some people who want to do it themselves. There are probably better ways to set the sliding part up for the tray, or better ways to make the trays carryable. If there's anything that you guys have seen, I guess let's move into to that section next, and we'll do bathrooms after.
Yeah, awesome. Jackie, did you have anything to say on this? Because I haven't really been in a food court this past year.
There is an idea, but I'm not sure if you'd be able to buy it anywhere. It's kind of like what do you call those things? I guess like a bed breakfast serving table with like the foldable legs. If you could almost find something like that with like clamps on the end to clamp onto like a foot plate frame, or clip onto a part of the wheelchair to make it carryable.
Are you saying like the tray itself would clip on like here, or would be on wheels and kind of flip to the front of the chair? I'm drawing.
Could be either.
Okay. Give me a moment.
I imagine Griffin's skills are going to be much better than mine, but for the audience, for anyone wondering, Jackie's describing, and I can't remember the name either, those bed trays that you use to do Mother's Day breakfast and bread. It looks like a flat table, and then it folds out the tray, and you set it on the bed, and the legs are in between. And what you could do is you get a wheelchair where you have your chair, and you figure out a way to either one side or both sides make it so the table can be attached, or the tray can be attached to the chair. That way, the person has a little bit more mobility when moving down the lunch line, given if they couldn't use the table for the tray to be slid down because they're too short, or just getting, wheeling from that area to the tables to eat without assistance, if I got that correctly.
Yes.
These are my very, very quick drawings. This was supposed to be a clamp, but I'm looking like a foot plate on its own. Wheels, tray, and having like those edges on the tray, because I'm a wobbly person who has fallen out of my chair repeatedly. And so like when I'm wobbling around or going way too fast or whatever, like I will knock things off the thing. So if you are able to find something like this or build something like this, I'm sure you could bug some universities engineering program.
I was gonna say, in America we have that saying where we don't believe in dystopianism, so you'll get all the time where the news headline goes, parents couldn't afford wheelchair for their 2-year-old, so high school robotics club builds it. And instead of marketing that as a weird dystopian thing, they go, yay, we're helping each other. But this museum, obviously it's a major community effort. A lot of it is volunteer work, a lot of it is groups helping out, a lot of it is, especially once we get to the part where we do future videos on the channel, such as the town halls, which everyone watching has heard me and Marshall and other members talk about so many times. But we could go to, I haven't seen this anywhere to purchase when looking for my sister or for friends. But we could definitely workshop it, especially when we do those test exhibits, maybe get some cosplayers, have them make a few, and then once we hit a design that works, manufacture it ourselves if we can't find it. And if we do go that route, that's definitely something that we give out to other areas and try and distribute as much as we can. But yeah, that's actually a really great idea. And if anyone watching this video now or in the future has seen something like that, be sure to send it to us. Or if you have an idea or a way to test it or want to actually make it, reach out to us any way you can.
Sorry. I know that you can get similar stuff that like clamps onto the frame of your chair for like wheelchair accessible baby strollers, so that the mother can carry the baby somewhat lap height, still see where she's or he is navigating, but still be able to see the baby.
What concerns would we have in regards to universability of it? Because I'm not familiar with if there are any differences in chair with designs and models. Would the clamp position be relatively same across chairs, or would there? I'm sure that's something we could figure out down the line, but I was just wondering how different chairs are with like having bars in the same spots or whatnot.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
I don't have armrests, and most active manual chairs or lightweight manual chairs, rigid chairs, whatever you want to call it, most of us get rid of our armrests or just never get them. I just didn't get them because it was extra anyways. Or actually, no, I think it was with it, but they get in the way. So for manual chairs, most of us don't have armrests unless we're using we're newly injured, so we're using those hospital chairs, or we can't afford a nice chair, our government doesn't cover it or whatever. So maybe if anyone is building this or something like it, the foot plate idea would probably work best, in having that foot plate clip be adjustable to different heights. Because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show you. Ignore the fact I'm not wearing shoes. I hate shoes. They're awful. But you can see my foot plate is decent height off the ground because I have really short legs. A lot of rigid chairs, they'll be nearly touching the ground.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, because that was the first thing that came to mind, because one of my friends is on a basketball team, and I know they pretty much use that same chair all the time, just out of sheer exercise, so they don't have the arm pieces. And my next thought was okay, well, you have not the handles, but the bars on the back of the handles, but that's a bad idea because that gets in the way of your arms. But the foot plate definitely sounds like a good idea. I'm just going through because I want to try and touch on as much of the sections as we can before we move to other sections. So if there's any, so far where we are, if there's any concerns anyone might have about hallways, exhibits, entrances, food places, any of the rooms, we can touch on them, or we can, I guess, move on to other sections.
I do have one thing to add. If you guys are doing like a cafe idea for tables, what's a good idea is, instead of parking the chairs at the very end of a table, have that option, but also have like maybe the side where someone would sit, have a section cut out so someone maybe in a chair like what Griffin's in can sit between or on either side of the seat, so we're not necessarily just on one end of the table or the other. If I'm explaining that right.
Yes. Sorry. While you were explaining, I was attempting my terrible artist skills to try and make my interpretation of what I imagine you're saying. And again, I really am not the best artist, so I
Not
probably
great at
botched this up.
explaining stuff either.
But what I imagine you're saying is, I drew it in the perspective of a booth because I personally love booths. I personally don't like normal tables with the normal in the center where you have your chair and stuff. I like the privacy of booths. So my immediate thought was, okay, if we're going to do this, we have to have a booth version, because obviously with normal tables, you can just shift the chairs around if you really want. So for some tables, they have like those two legs supporting the table, which then makes it impossible to move the chair depending, but I digress. So what I imagined you were saying was, you have your booth and you have your door, you have your long, booth and your table, and then you have a shorter booth, and then you can park the chair at the side with that. That's what I imagine you're saying.
I personally, I love booths, and I know, like, my sister, when we go to restaurants, wherever, she likes to sit at the booths because they're more comfortable, and I normally just go and sit on the booth, but a lot of people can't transfer as easily. I can stand up and move. So having an option like that would be good. And those pedestal tables, so the tables that are like, this is like the fastest drawing I could do, but like, this is the shape. It looks kind of like a surfboard, but it's a table.
Get it.
I hope this is making you feel better about your drawing skills, Robert, because I'm a graphic designer and this is what this looks like. So is the table, and then like just having the one instead of having like the four whatevers going around. It's much easier, much more comfortable, and I'm much less likely to end up smacking my leg into something, because you can see my new. Oh, you actually can't see. My knees are constantly bruised, like constantly, because I run into everything, and we have not so like. The reason I'm moving so much is I don't really fit underneath this table very well. I like scratch the tops of my legs. So having those pedestal tables are, in my opinion, in my experience, the most comfortable and easiest to use in a chair, or at least in a manual chair. They're the easiest. Or a hybrid chair, as mine is, but I like to call it that so it sounds like a fancy car. Can you guys hear him? He's being loud. No. Okay, good.
No, I can't hear him. All right, well, I guess that takes care of that. So, we got one more question, and then after that we can move into free stuff. I don't see too many people in the chat, so we can move into just 3 questions you have about the museum, and then we'll call it. So the next question is just about bathrooms. I know you've talked about that a little bit in some of your streams before. The main immediate question I'd had, because we already touched like stalls and sinks and doors and things like that, and just making sure everything's wide enough, low enough, and accessible enough, because I don't often see low sinks. So definitely we want to have one or two sinks that are lower, probably 2. The frequency of them, is that something that we should account for?
What do you mean? Sorry, you're gonna have to. I couldn't hear a little bit what you said.
Well, I meant like the frequency. Like, usually you go into a place and you have like a mall, for instance, you'll have 5, and you can like never find any of them for the square footage, for the number of like areas. Do we want 1 per every hall, or like 2 per every hall? What's something that is that a general concern?
Jackie, were you wanting to answer that one?
I don't really have anything to add to it.
Something with bathrooms I've found, and I don't know if this is just here in Canada or what, but so my preference is, I mean, I'm not binary, so I like the all general washrooms, and the accessible all general washrooms are the best ones, obviously. But a lot of times those washrooms won't be open. They'll be marked as family washrooms, or so a lot of times, and this is such a weird thing, and it's in big city malls, they'll have these, and they'll have something that's like a press the button. So you press the little button, and it's like, it looks like an elevator button. It's got a speaker, and someone in security looks through the little camera in it and decides whether or not you can go into that bathroom. And it's awful. Like I came out as, I thought I was a trans guy for a while, was very wrong and non-binary, because I was very much stuck in like binary thinking at the time. But so I was like, I don't want to go into the girls' bathroom. I'm not safe going into the men's washroom. And so I wanted to use the all gender washroom. This was before even like my disability had really progressed. Like at the time I was just like, wow, I have really bad rib pain. This is weird. But so I was like, okay, I need to find an all gender bathroom. And they had the sign all gender on it, but you had to press this button. They had to judge whether you were trans enough, or whether you're disabled enough, or whether like your family is young enough to use this bathroom. So like having those just open, because some people are, can I use language here? You care?
I don't
Some people are dicks. Like they're absolute dicks, and they'll just use it when they don't need it. And then we're out here like, I really need to take a piss, and there's not another option. And for a lot of us, like, urgency to go to the bathroom is like, with my condition, everything is stretchy, which means I won't realize I need to go to the bathroom until I'm like bloated from the fact that I have to take a piss. And I'm like, I have to go, and I have to go now. So like, you will see me sprinting across a mall, and then someone's using that bathroom. And so having like a fair few of them, and having them as those like all gender, like single stall, where the sink is in the stall with you, because these hand rooms get nasty if you're trying to get over to the sink after like going to the bathroom. But then you have to open the stall door, which like, you'll know how nasty someone gross had touched that before. So you're not touching that, then you're touching your chair, and there's no option to like wipe it down or whatever. I carry Lysol wipes with me because of that, so I can wipe things down after you use bathroom. So like having those single stall, sorry, this is such a ramble, but having those single stall with the sink in it means I'm not touching a door handle that someone else has touched after they've gone to the bathroom. And I'm like careful not to get anything on myself. Some people aren't that careful. Some people are gross. So I don't want to like get other people's germs on my rims, because I've touched these all day, right? So having the sink in the bathroom, having so Jackie and I went to the same high school. I'm gonna say that loud. Our school had some very interesting bathrooms. They were staff bathrooms that had been turned into accessible and all gender bathrooms.
And they didn't have locks. Do you remember that? The amount of times I was in there either doing a catheter or mid-transfer, and the door would open, and I would have to like round kick the door shut, and like, no.
I forgot about that. Yeah, because the one I normally used, because I was normally in the theater, so the only one that had a lock was the one by the theater, and I would go out of my way to just use that one.
I would literally park my chair in front of the door.
They were so weird because they were staff washrooms before. They were super accessible in the fact they had bidets and heated seats. They
had
so
one
fancy.
of those. Yeah. Oh my
I don't know why
God.
they had them.
And then you go into the student's bathroom and like, it's shit.
Yeah. You go to the student's bathroom, there's like toilet paper stuck to the ceiling, someone peed on the floor, and then
someone wrote on lipstick in the wall.
It was a secret between the trans and disabled students that like we have the nicest washrooms. We couldn't like we're not telling anyone because otherwise there's going to be a giant line because like who isn't like we live in Canada, it's freezing, so you come in from like -30 weather and you need to go to the bathroom, heated seats, beautiful. But that was not the point. But even those bidets,
wasn't it?
Thinking about that, that's an accessibility thing. Like that itself is an accessibility thing, and yeah, they're not cheap and they're whatever, but like
no,
I think they're like you can buy them on Amazon now. I'm like, bro, I kind of want one, but anyways,
get a heated wheelchair seat. That's what we need.
I'm thinking that because I'm moving to Ottawa, which is really really cold, and I'm thinking of getting one of those like car heated seat things and plugging it into a portable charger. And so I can
be careful it doesn't overheat.
Yeah, and just light my
just like fire. One day you're driving and just
but
yeah,
just it's the moment where I'm just melting snow as the back of my chair is on fire. No, but like having options and having like they had something that they had that I didn't really understand at the time because I wasn't really like comfortable in my disability enough and like because at the time I probably could have used a chair. I was in pain most days. I fell asleep in classes because I didn't have energy.
I remember.
Yeah, I would just fall asleep in the middle of the floor and people just walk around me and they're like, that's fine, it's great, it's fine.
This is normal. This is okay.
Normal. I probably could have used it. I probably would have gotten more out of class and probably would have gotten better grades. But I was not comfortable with myself. I was very much like, there's not really a term for it, but in the closet with my disability as well. I didn't share the information. I didn't like, I make wheelchair jokes about myself. I have a very dark sense of humor naturally.
Dude.
Despite the fact I look like a child constantly.
Dude, nobody has a darker sense of humor than me.
Oh no, Jackie has me beat for sure.
Do you know remember the game?
Well, I'm gonna interject here just
sorry
because unfortunately we are hitting time a little bit, and it is nice because people are used to hearing me talk, so hearing other people talk is great. But yeah, definitely a lot of, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this stream is because people have the difficulty of asking for help or talking about things. I definitely get that. The only experience that I've had with all gender restrooms is at the Natural History Museum, I think, where they have a European section and has a European all gender restroom like they do in Europe. You walk in and it's just normal bathroom, stall, urinal, sinks for anyone. Massive thing, bunch of stuff. And when I was working on my university, we were converting one floor into an all gender floor, and we were doing that in a way where we took that bathroom type, but we had made each stall a full stall. So in the back, it looked like a normal toilet stall. You'd open the door, inside you'd have sink, toilet, and in the back you'd have a shower and then a little cubby for like changing. So yeah, those were definitely some things we want to take away from, definitely with consideration to people might be out, people might not be out, all genders healthy, but still have insecurity of like everything being in one stall and just general stuff like that. So I think we've pretty much touched on that. I don't see any questions in the comment section. So if you guys have any immediate thoughts or questions, we can do that and then we'll wrap up. I see Griffin waiting.
I have one more thing on the bathroom thing. And obviously
you already know add when you're done.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, the bathroom thing is like, can you not, buddy? He's jumping through the door. So having those little, you'll see those bright yellow boxes that are like for disposing of needles or anything like that. Having those in every single washroom, not just the accessible ones, because people who don't really need the accessible stall, but say need to inject insulin or anything like that, they need a place to throw it out without like taking up the accessible stall. Bro. And also, obviously, you notice like you guys are the museum of LGBT stuff, but having like those tampon dispensers in every single washroom, not just the women's or whatever, but like having in the men's too. Obviously, you guys already know that, but putting out there for anyone who's watching who's like, what should I do when building a bathroom for all genders or whatever, accessible bathrooms? We have periods too. They suck. But stuff like that, and having disposals for that, because even like if we don't have periods, some of us wear diapers, some of us like wear a pad for incontinence or anything like that. So just like having those options there, even like in the men's washrooms, if it's like a men's accessible bathroom, having that there as well, because otherwise then they can only use the all gender ones because there's not a space, or they have to put it in their bag, which is just sucks. So Jackie, what were you wanting to say? Sorry.
I was basically gonna add something similar to that, and I was gonna add that multiple grab rails at various spots of the orthopedic, I guess technically, or all gender bathroom would be necessary, because not just because obviously everybody, or not everybody technically, but a lot of people use them. But there's also, I personally don't do a lot of transfers when I use public bathrooms, but I have noticed if I drop something, it is very helpful to have a bar here to grab while I bend over. Because for me, part of my disability, I have cerebral palsy, but I have a weird side to it where my limbs will randomly just give out. So if I'm mid bending over and I'm not hanging on to something, I will just do a face plant. And it sucks. I've done it many times.
Face planting into a tile floor is never enjoyable.
Try cement. It's great.
I've only ever done tile where I've whacked myself. But
it's
sorry,
great.
we just had like a couple more things so that we got chatting. But yeah, what was next? Sorry, Robert.
No, that was it. Unfortunately, we have run our course in time though, but those were all great notes. Everything perfect there. If anyone else has any last minute stuff, if not, we'll end and enjoy seeing the comments from the audience in the comment section.
I will. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. And when this is posted, their descriptions will be in our description, so you can get in touch with them. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.